Hi, I'm Susan Shaner with Community Forum, and today I have the great pleasure to have Sharon Ruckman, who is a composer, and she hails to us from the Litchfield County area. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And I know you're a contemporary, you do contemporary chamber music, is that right?
Well, it's classical. Sometimes they call that classical contemporary, but it's primarily classical, and chamber music is really what I mostly do are trios and quartets and duets and small ensembles.
Okay. So, you know, I was looking at your website, and it says that you do music for the piano, the cello, the violin, the viola, the flute, the oboe, the bassoon, the clarinet. That's a lot of instruments.
Right.
Clarinet.
It is a lot, and different combinations.
Wow.
And I've actually, the largest piece that I wrote, I think was really consisted of 7 different instruments. But primarily I deal with, or I should say I compose for trios and duets and string quartets. I'm very interested in that also.
Okay, so this is really interesting. So tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, how did you come to this? Where are you from? What was your education around this?
Okay. I graduated from New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. That's where I got my Bachelor of Music. And then I moved on to Yale School of Music, where I was at graduate school. I got my Master's in Music there. And believe it or not, I was actually not a theory major or composer. I spent a lot of time performing. I was actually a voice major in graduate school and in undergraduate school. And I did a lot of piano accompanying for some of the performances, recitals, and for some of the classes or lessons that people had.
So you started out majoring in voice. So do you sing?
It was piano actually first. Piano, I started lessons at age 8. And then I continued on with that. And then later on, as my voice matured, I decided to take voice lessons. And so I always did both. And then in between, I was doing a little cello. I mean, I loved playing the cello, and I did it on and off over the years, but it takes a tremendous amount of time, so therefore I found that I just didn't have the time to really give all my everything that I had.
So you started out playing the piano, then you went to the cello, and then you started singing. So when you studied voice, was there a particular kind of music that you would sing, like opera? Or?
Yes, well, I did some opera. I also did something called Lieder, which were songs, and Lieder is something that was given for Brahms, songs that Brahms wrote, and Schubert and Schumann. So it was basically classical music. That's what I mostly sang. And I had the fortune of singing in some wonderful groups. I was actually in the New England Conservatory Choir, but also in the summertime I was at the Blossom Music Festival, and I had the fortune of being in a very small chamber choir of 16 voices under the, actually Robert Shaw conducted that particular group. And then I also was at the Ambler Music Festival, so I had the experience of being at a lot of different music festivals and had just great experience with all of that.
Wow. So how did you come to actually writing music?
Okay. Well, I have to say I've always been interested in theory. It's just been always fascinating for me, and I've studied it as when I was studying piano and voice, I also studied theory. That was part of my background and my education. And I guess after raising a family, I guess it was in my blood, and I decided I really needed to go back and do some more writing. And so,
what, were you playing and doing all this while you were raising your family, or you kind of took some time off?
I did perform, and I did play, so I always kept up with that.
Yeah.
But the composition part of it came later on. And like I said, when I was actually 5 years old, I would just play around in the piano, and I would write little melodies. So I was always interested in writing melodies. And but then, about 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to go back to school. I actually went back to the Yale School of Music and studied with a teacher. I studied composition. I had private, it was a private study.
Just recently?
About 5 years ago.
Wow.
And then I did a lot of composing then. And then decided, and the teacher moved to New York, and the way all of this actually started to come about was that I had a cello teacher who had asked me to write a duet for piano and cello. And it turns out that I never played it with her, but I discovered that there was a cellist down the road from me in my town, and she had been living there for 7 years. And I found about her through a friend.
You just sort of came upon this
through a
cellist.
friend. And this friend told me about this cellist living in town. I said, oh my God, I have to call her up. And her name is Mary Costanza, and who I play with now. And we just hit it off. I mean, we really played well together. It was great. And so she played this first piece that I wrote, which was this piece for cello and piano. And then after that, things just started to move along, and I was writing, before I knew it, quartets and trios and duets, and I managed to find some other musicians in the area, which actually some of them were from the Waterbury Symphony. And so those are the people that I used to record my CD.
So when you write and you have other people play it, how do you go about finding people who will play your songs?
Oh, well, first of all, you have to trust that if you know a few musicians that you really like, very often they bring in some other musicians that you may not know, but they have worked with them and they feel comfortable with them. So they come along and you just kind of take a chance, but most of the time they're very good musicians. And what you often have to do before you record is you have to really go into detail about what you're looking for in the piece and what kind of sound you want, what type of dynamics you want, just a lot of information about the piece that they need to know, and you have to review that, and so that it comes to result in what you want.
I imagine some of it is sort of a combination of right and left brain. I mean, some of it's sort of mathematical, but isn't it, some of it's emotional too that you want, right?
A lot of it is emotional.
Yeah.
A lot of it is emotional. I put a lot of my self into it, and that's what I get the most thrill from, is that I feel that my music is inspirational, and people have told me that they feel it's soulful and it's very calming, and that's what I want to get across.
So how do you get an idea for a creative piece? Like, what's your creative process?
Okay. There's actually two different ways. One is that very often, and actually I have a number of these pieces on my CD where I've had an image in mind, and then I work from there. And so, for instance, I have this piece called Day of Play and Day's End, which is about children playing, and it really feels like that. And then at the end, when they're ready to go to sleep, when they're totally wiped out from playing on the playground, then there's a calming part to the end of this piece, and it's because they're ready to doze off, and you feel that almost when you hear it. I actually had that performed. There's something called the Women's Composers Festival in Hartford, and they played this piece.
Yeah.
They found their own musicians to play this piece. It takes place every year.
So there's a Women's Composer
yes,
Festival. So there's a lot of women composers around.
In Connecticut. In Connecticut.
It's a very specific in Connecticut.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes. So
and it's in the summer?
I think we did this in the, good question, I'm not sure if we think we did it last spring. When they have it, March or April.
So you get an idea, so like
you have
kids
an idea.
playing, and,
right.
and then you just sort of play around on the piano, what would sound and feel like kids playing?
Right. I do that. I've had other pieces where it's about water, or this new CD that I've just come out with called Arrival of Spring, and it really does feel like spring. It's a two-movement piece. But besides the image part, I just go to the piano, and very often I just have these different melodic ideas or motifs.
So you just sort of play around?
Just play around, I write them down, and then very often I go back and forth with it. So I leave the room, then I go back again, and then I have to know, after maybe listening to those melodies over and over again, either it sits well with me or it doesn't. And I know that if I'm still happy with it, you know, after a certain period of time, then I go with that, and then I try to find other melodies that work with that. For instance, if I'm doing a 3-movement piece, I have to come up with 3 main melodies. But I don't know, we haven't discussed this, but part of the writing process is working with a program called Finale, which is actually a notation program, and it's a computer program.
Oh, really?
And so that's how I
So you plug
write.
in little notes and stuff? Is
Well,
that
that's how I write. I actually have a keyboard. It's a synthesizer, and it's hooked up to this
Interesting.
computer. And basically, since I'm a keyboard person, that's how I work. And what happens
So
is
you're not
when you,
sitting there actually at the piano. You're on the computer.
well, at first I do go to the piano. I go back and forth to the piano to get
Isn't
the
that-
ideas.
This is modern composing,
Yeah,
I guess.
but right, but once I have those ideas, I very often even write the rest of the piece while I'm sitting in front of this Finale program. But what's great about it is that, you know, you first start the program up and you decide which instrumentation you want to use. And then if you say, I feel like writing something for oboe and flute, and I kind of have something in my head,
You can actually pull up the oboe.
It sets up the score for
Oh,
just
that's
the oboe and
interesting.
flute. Then when the you know, when I get the cue, I actually play something, and it all appears on the screen.
So because I read all these instruments you play, so I'm thinking you have all these instruments at home, but you don't. You have this
No,
computer.
these are actually, they represent and used by and played by musicians that I know.
Yeah.
You know, and so I've only played a few of them, but some of them are, as I said, I would like to write for those instruments. But
so why don't we, because it's sort of been building up,
Okay.
why don't we listen to one of the pieces?
Okay.
So the piece that we're going to, can you tell us a little bit about the piece we're going to listen to?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is called Sea Glass. And Sea Glass, I got the idea from of Sea Glass from this, we go to Maine quite a bit, and I just thought about the beach and the water in Maine, and the sea glass on the beach, and you know, that's kind of what gave me the idea, and so that's what I decided to write. And there's a lot of tranquil moments in this
Well,
piece.
you know, when we were trying to pick which song, I grew up on the beach, and I picked a lot of Sea Glass. And when you said Sea Glass, I said, let's do that one. All right, so do we have it? Are we okay to set it up?
When you say it.
Okay, let's play it.
Play it.
that was very pretty.
Thank you.
I was imagining myself walking along the beach picking up sea glass. Because, I grew up on the beach, literally. My mom
Right.
took us to the beach every day.
Right.
And of course, these days, you can't find a lot of sea glass.
No, but in Maine, there's a lot of sea glass.
Because they don't allow people to have glass on the beach, but I grew up
Right.
with a huge sea glass collection.
Right. Well, we get, as I said, in Maine, it's still abundant.
Yeah.
You know, it's still there.
So you had one day on the beach and you just got this inspiration?
I just thought of Maine. I mean, I don't know, you just get these images in your head and you just decide, or you can look at a picture and you get an idea about something. And I think that's where very often it starts. And sometimes it's just all of a sudden you're, without even thinking about it, you have a melody in your head.
Yeah.
And I find that the more you do it, the more you stimulate your brain. And it seems to be, it comes more frequently if you just do it, if there's a constant flow. If you sit down every day and you write, it seems to come even more.
So do you have a
ideas.
discipline in that way? Like, do you?
Yes.
So you write every day?
Yes. I mean, I've been now away from it because I've been working on my second CD, and I've been spending a lot of time working on the recording part of it, making sure that, and the editing part of it.
Yeah.
And it takes a tremendous amount of time. It took about 5 or 6 months. So it's very difficult to do both because you really need a clear head when you're writing. And when you're busy editing and doing all that other stuff, it's very difficult.
So when you're
to
in the
do
writing mode, what do you do? Like first thing in the morning, or set aside like a couple hours, or what's your?
Sometimes I go all day. But I always like to take a break because it's good to move away from it and then go back, just like I guess any writer would do. Because when you go back to it, it looks different the second time.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, how do you? So, how long does it typically take you to do a piece?
Well, sometimes I'm lucky. I just kind of just get it right out. I mean, like this piece for cello and piano. I just made the decision to sit down, and within, I think, even a week, I had it. I had a 2-movement piece. And very often, music goes like that. And then there are times where you just keep hitting the same bumps.
Yeah.
And you just, I don't know, it's just like one little section just throws you.
So you said when you're in the writing mode,
Right.
not production mode, you write every day. So it's just good to have that discipline because your mind
Right.
knows, hey, get ready, I'm going to be writing.
Right.
But do you have days where your blocker is just not flowing?
I mean, I guess that happens, but I don't let myself be bothered by that, and I just.
So if you have a day where it's not flowing,
Right. I mean,
what do you
there
do?
are
Just go
times,
do laundry or
but I
something?
don't give up. I don't give up. I just say, you know what? Okay, I don't have the best day. It can't be great every day.
Right.
So I go back to it, and I just kind of keep working through it, and eventually something happens. And I think if you don't give up, you just keep, you get those ideas.
So it sounds like you were a musician more or less all your life, and you came upon the composing fairly recently.
Right.
What would you say to like a budding composer or artist or somebody who really wanted to pursue their music, their passion?
Right. Well, I would say to anyone that if you have a passion for something and you believe in it, you believe in what you do, then you should follow your dream, because it's not easy being anyone who's creative. It's a difficult thing to be in terms of making a career of it.
Yeah.
But at first you have to believe in what you're doing and love it, because it's a part of you, and that's very important. That's the first thing. Fortunately, today, as opposed to a while ago, there are different ways to promote yourself, and a lot of it now is about social networking. It's about Twitter and Facebook, which I'm on Facebook and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm also going through this process of trying to find different ways to promote myself. But I think that there's much more available to people who want careers and to get yourself heard. And so I think that's the advantage today.
Yeah, literally get yourself heard with the music.
Right.
I mean, so what's been the most rewarding thing about this for you?
I would say the most rewarding thing is to listen to what I hope and feel is beautiful music that I created. I mean, that's the most rewarding part of it.
Yeah.
It takes a lot to get to that point, because even though you have these ideas, which are great, you have to work with those, and then they have to be played properly, and then they have to be put together properly, and there's certain structures that have to be, just like anyone who writes, there's a structure to all of this.
Yeah.
And
So what's been your biggest challenge or frustration? So like if you're dealing with a musician maybe who's just not getting it right, and like you know what you want there, but have you had any of that? Or
I have had that, and I think very often, I shouldn't say often that you don't, that you have difficulties with people. I think it's not often, but the trick is to be able to hook up and to connect with that person, that they're on the same wavelength as you, that they look at and view the music in the same way, that they feel it in the same way. I think that's very important. Sometimes it's about personality. Sometimes personalities clash, and so you find the people who work for you and with you. And that is really a challenge sometimes, but if you find those people, you just hold on to them. And that's even if there are only a few of them. And because it's not always easy to find that person.
So when you find a musician, you have a piece, and this cello, it sounds like that worked out really well, but if you find a musician, somebody's playing a particular instrument that you've just written for, what do you do? Do you interview them and say, how do you work, or play this piece, and let me see how you play this piece? I
think, what happened was with Mary, this cellist, she came to my house. I gave her the music. She came back to me. We played it together. I really, when I heard her play, I said to myself, this woman really feels what she's playing. And so that was very inspirational and wonderful. And also personality-wise, that worked. And so actually, because I met her, since that piece for cello and piano, I've written another 6 or 7 other cello and piano duets, because I was so inspired to do that, because we work so well together. So now we just perform just cello and piano duets, because it's very difficult bringing in other musicians.
So you do the piano and she does the cello?
Yes.
So you do it together? So you're writing the piece and then you're playing it together?
Yes.
So you just create concerts and then just...
Well, we find different venues and we perform, and what makes it so great is that I have enough material, enough music, that it's just the two of us. And so we just play our duets, because once you have to bring in other musicians to play your music, it gets more complicated. And logistically it's difficult. So that's why this has worked out very nicely for us. You know.
So then going into the recording, so you're writing, then you're playing, and then you're going into the recording studio, and that sounds like that's a whole other level of performance.
It is, because you have to do a lot of takes, like somebody doing a movie. I mean, you know, there are a lot of takes, and you hope that you get all the things that you need, because at the moment when you're recording, you don't think about all those little things or those little notes that may not be right. But you hope if you do enough takes that it works. And I've had a wonderful experience having recording done at my home, actually. And the recording engineer came in, and I had a great room to record, and I love my piano. He's just has a great sound to it, and so he recorded there, and it worked well for the small group, the duets and the trios. The quartet I did somewhere else, and then we edited together. But it's very exciting. But again, you know, everyone gets a little nervous for the recording, so it takes a number of times to, you know, feel comfortable, and then really not be thinking about what's going on with the recording, but actually just thinking about the music. And that takes a while.
So do you imagine you have an audience, or do you have people come in when you're recording just so you can get to feel like you're playing to an audience? Because you're sort of playing to no one. Or
well, you know that, you know, when you have the people, I mean, it's really, you're playing for each other. So that's really all that matters. It really has to be an ensemble, and you have to play together, and you have to feel the same way, and you have gone over all of this in rehearsals, and so hopefully it's all coming out okay. But if you have good people, it works well. It really does. And then the hard part is actually editing. Because you're trying to find those takes that work
Yeah.
for one measure that didn't work for another measure, and so you're
Oh,
patching,
wow. So
you're
really-
editing
you
and
really
patching,
do cut and paste.
and that is an art in itself.
Yeah, I can
It really
imagine.
is. And then of course, then you have to balance out the levels,
Yeah.
the volume levels, make sure everything's pretty
It's really
even from one
technical.
track to another.
Where do you, just give us a headline, where do you want where do you want to go with this work?
Well, I want my music to be heard, and I guess that I would hope that people would find that my music touches their heart. And I've actually had a number of my tracks played on WSHU and WMNR, so I have them played on radio, and I'd like to just continue to have people hear it, and whether that be with social networking, or whether that be with performing, or whether
Yeah.
that be with television or radio, whatever works.
Yeah.
But that's very important to me, because I'm hoping that people will really be inspired by it.
Oh, that's great. So if somebody was interested in hearing your music, they could, I know they can listen to it on your website, right?
Yes, it's just www.sharonruchman.com, SharonRuchman.com, and I have samplers on there, and various other information about myself.
Yeah, it's misleading. I'm glad you spelled it, because Ruchman, it sounds, it looks like it
sounds
should be
like a K, R-U-C-K-M-A-N, but it's R-U-C-H-M-A-N.
Okay, that's
Yes.
great. Yeah, so they can go on your website and learn more about you, and also
Yes.
play some samples if they
Yes,
want to.
absolutely.
Which I
And
did,
then
I
I'm
played.
going to have my second CD samplers on there pretty soon.
Okay.
Because I just received all of those CDs, and now I have to do something.
Well,
with
it's inspirational just to hear a little bit about your creative process, and thanks for coming
you.
on the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Susan Shainer. Until next time with Community Forum. Thanks for joining us.